Picture this. You're standing over your thriving worm bin, watching hundreds of red wigglers transform your kitchen scraps into black gold, when suddenly you notice something's wrong. The sweet, earthy smell has turned sour, your worms are sluggish and trying to escape, and there's a sticky, gooey mess coating everything. That was my reality 3 months into my worm composting journey, and it all started with one seemingly innocent kitchen scrap that I thought would be perfect for my hungry little decomposers. If you're wondering whether all kitchen scraps are fair game for your worm bin, let me save you from the heartbreak I experienced. While worms are incredible composting machines, they're also surprisingly delicate creatures with specific dietary needs. One wrong move with sticky foods can turn your thriving ecosystem into a disaster zone that takes weeks to recover from. The silent destroyer understanding sticky foods in worm bins. The culprit that nearly destroyed my carefully balanced worm ecosystem wasn't something obviously harmful like citrus peels or onions. It was something far more insidious. Leftover oatmeal mixed with honey that I thought would provide excellent nutrition for my worms. Within days, this sticky concoction had created a nightmare scenario that taught me one of the most valuable lessons in vermiculture. Sticky foods present unique challenges in worm composting because they fundamentally disrupt the delicate balance your bin requires to function properly. Unlike fibrous vegetable scraps that break down gradually while maintaining proper airflow, sticky substances create impermeable barriers that suffocate beneficial microorganisms and trap moisture in all the wrong places. When you add something sticky to your worm bin, you're essentially creating pockets of anaerobic conditions that become breeding grounds for harmful bacteria and fungi. The problem compounds quickly, because worms naturally move through their bedding by ingesting organic matter and excreting nutrient-rich castings. When sticky foods are present, this natural process becomes disrupted as the substances coat their bodies and interfere with their ability to breathe through their skin. What starts as a well-intentioned feeding can rapidly evolve into a life-threatening situation for your entire worm population. Dairy products. The creamy catastrophe. Dairy products represent perhaps the most dangerous category of sticky foods you can introduce to your worm bin. Milk, yogurt, cheese, and cream don't just create sticky messes. They fundamentally alter the pH balance of your composting environment while attracting every pest imaginable. When I mistakenly added some expired Greek yogurt to my bin, thinking the probiotics would benefit my worms, I created conditions that were toxic to my vermiculture ecosystem. The lactose in dairy products ferments rapidly in the warm, moist environment of a worm bin, producing lactic acid that makes the environment too acidic for worms to survive comfortably. This fermentation process also generates heat, which can literally cook your worms if enough dairy is present. Additionally, the proteins in dairy break down into ammonia compounds that are toxic to worms in concentrated amounts. Beyond the direct harm to worms, dairy products send out chemical signals that attract rats, mice, flies, and other unwanted visitors to your composting setup. These pests don't just steal food from your worms, they often carry diseases and parasites that can devastate your worm population. The sticky nature of dairy means these attractants persist much longer than they would with other organic materials, creating ongoing pest pressure that can last for weeks even after you've removed the offending dairy products. Oils and fats, they're like the suffocating slick in your worm bin. Cooking oils, animal fats, and greasy food scraps create another category of sticky disasters that can destroy worm bin ecosystems. These substances don't break down easily in the cool, moist environment of a worm bin, instead forming persistent films that coat everything they contact. When oil-soaked food scraps are added to worm bins, they create waterproof barriers that prevent proper moisture regulation and gas exchange. Worms breathe through their skin, which must remain moist but not waterlogged to function properly. When oils coat their bodies or their immediate environment, this delicate respiratory system fails. The worms essentially suffocate slowly while struggling to process materials their digestive systems weren't designed to handle. Fats and oils also rancidify in the bin, creating foul odors and toxic compounds that drive worms away from their food sources. The ripple effects of adding oils and fats extend beyond direct harm to worms. These substances interfere with the water cycle in your bin, preventing proper drainage while, simultaneously creating hydrophobic zones where beneficial moisture just can't penetrate. This disruption affects the entire microbial community that worms depend on for pre-digesting organic matter, essentially breaking down the collaborative ecosystem that makes vermiculture possible. Sweet sticky traps, sugary foods and syrups, honey, maple syrup, corn syrup, and other concentrated sweeteners might seem like they'd provide excellent energy for hardworking composting worms, but they actually create some of the most problematic conditions possible in worm bins. These substances don't just stick to everything, they fundamentally alter the microbial balance in ways that can take months to correct. High sugar environments encourage the rapid growth of harmful bacteria and fungi that compete directly with the beneficial microorganisms your worms need to thrive. When I added that honey-sweetened oatmeal to my bin, I unknowingly created perfect conditions for pathogenic organisms that began producing toxins harmful to my worm population. The sticky nature of these sweeteners means they persist in the environment much longer than natural fruit sugars, creating ongoing problems rather than the quick energy boost I had envisioned. Sugar also attracts ants, which can devastate a worm bin by harvesting both the sweet substances and the worms themselves. These tiny invaders often introduce additional problems by disturbing the carefully layered structure of bedding materials and creating tunnels that disrupt proper airflow and moisture distribution throughout the bin. If you've already introduced sticky foods to your worm bin, don't panic. Recovery is possible, though it requires patience and systematic intervention. The first step involves carefully removing as much of the sticky material as possible without disturbing your worms more than necessary. Use a small spoon or spatula to lift away visible clumps, then add dry bedding materials like shredded paper or cardboard to absorb excess moisture and help break up remaining sticky residues. Increase ventilation in your bin by adding more air holes or temporarily removing the lid during cooler parts of the day. This helps combat the anaerobic conditions that sticky foods create. You might also need to adjust your feeding schedule, offering only small amounts of worm-friendly foods until the bin ecosystem stabilizes again. For prevention, it's important to focus on understanding what makes foods problematic before adding them to your bin. Anything that feels sticky to your fingers will likely cause problems for your worms. This includes not just obviously sticky foods, but also cooked grains that have absorbed moisture, fruit scraps with high sugar content, and processed foods containing oils or dairy derivatives. The key to successful worm composting lies in understanding that you're not just feeding worms. You're maintaining a complex ecosystem that includes bacteria, fungi, and, honestly, countless other microorganisms. Every food choice you make affects this entire community, and sticky foods disrupt the careful balance that keeps everyone healthy and productive. Focus instead on fibrous vegetables, fruit scraps with moderate sugar content, coffee grounds, tea bags, and paper products that provide both nutrition and proper texture for healthy bin conditions. These materials break down predictably while maintaining the airflow and moisture balance your worms need to convert waste into nutrient-rich castings. Remember that successful vermiculture is about consistency and understanding, rather than trying to maximize the variety of materials you add. Your worms will be far happier with a steady diet of appropriate foods than with constant surprises that challenge their digestive systems and living environment. Ready to transform your kitchen waste into garden gold without the sticky disasters? Subscribe to Smart Garden for more vermiculture wisdom, and share this guide with fellow gardeners who want to avoid the costly mistakes that can ruin months of careful worm bin development. Your worms will thank you, and your garden will reward you with the richest compost you've ever seen.